Hello, listeners near, far, and light years away. This is the Weekly What's Up. I'm Jay.
This is Damien.
And I'm not a CSGO announcer anymore. I'm William.
Here on the Weekly What's Up, we challenge ideas, provoke thought, and review various art forms from the filthy planet Earth. Coming up this week, we'll be discussing the film Hereditary by Ari Aster. But first, a word from our sponsor. Okay, so we're going to be discussing Hereditary by Ari Aster, and we're going to be going in sequential order of events to kind of walk you through what's going on. So, does anybody want to start us off on this movie?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good start.
The movie starts out with an opening shot in a miniatures workshop.
Doesn't it start with an obituary?
No.
It actually started with reading, which if I wanted to read, I would have picked up a book. So thanks, movie.
Well, it was an obituary. Wait, no, actually,
it was
hold
an
up,
obituary,
wait.
wasn't it?
It started with logos, I remember, because I watched it.
That's a cinema sin.
Yeah.
But after the obituary, there's an opening shot in Annie's miniatures workshop.
Yeah.
And it pans over to a miniature of their own house, in which we see the main characters, Peter and Steve. Peter's asleep, and Steve comes to wake him up.
Yeah, and the transition between the model house and Peter's room was really cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Are we getting into spoilers right away? Or nah?
Well, we can just say spoiler alert right now.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Okay, spoiler alert. I actually really like the intentions behind this opening shot of the house, of like the miniature house, with the people actually inside of it, as it turns out. Because it kind of conveys that the family is almost living in a dollhouse.
And being moved around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're being moved around,
Ooh.
and they're being controlled by the cult. And it's like, whatever they do inevitably leads to where the movie goes to, but they still think that they have like their own kind of free will. So I like the establishing shot for that reason, because it does show them like they're being played with.
Yes, I actually kind of realized that like after the movie was over and I was looking back over my notes, I was like, oh, was that like a free will thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Free will, not free willy.
After that, it leads into the family getting ready to go to their grandmother's funeral.
Yeah, and the part where the father finds Charlie sleeping in the treehouse, I was like, how about you put a lock on the treehouse at night, Steve? How about that?
I have a note about this, by the way. He makes a remark that she could get pneumonia and die, which I think is kind of like Pyman like trying to get his way that way, because she responds, "That's okay."
Oh.
Oh.
But they all get ready and go to their grandmother's funeral. But it's not like a reference to anything, but I thought that a shot at about 5 minutes and 40 seconds in, where they're actually at the funeral, Charlie is eating a Dove bar, and she bites the head off of the bird logo.
Oh, nicely done. I had a note about, I was like, what kind of bizarre, resentful eulogy is this? It's like, I don't think you know what a eulogy is, Buttercup. It's not an exposition dump. It's a way to praise someone's memory.
Yeah.
So she was like, these are all the things that were horrible about my mom. And I'm like, that's not how you do a eulogy, hon. Like, that's not how you do it. And she was like, my mom sucked, which explains why I suck, too. I was like, okay.
I do agree. And it's also very important to pay attention to who is actually in the audience in this shot. And she even makes a remark about it. She says, it's heartening to see so many new strange faces today.
Yeah. She also says something about private rituals there, right?
Does she? Oh, yeah, she does. But there she is shitting on her mom up on the podium. And then it cuts to an open casket of the grandmother. And about 5 minutes in, we see a fun little symbol that she's wearing inside the casket.
Yeah.
Charlie's kind of like viewing everyone like saying their goodbyes, and we see someone like dab something on the grandmother's mouth. We don't know what that is.
I was like, when you said when you said dab,
Oh.
you're like, we saw someone dab, and I was like, really? Where?
We saw someone dabbing so hard in the background.
Dab attack. They were like,
they broke both their arms. They were dabbing so fiercely.
just sign of demon possession.
Hate it.
So then they go home, and as soon as I saw the dog, like 6 minutes and 30 seconds, my note is, I predict that this dog will die. I'm not happy about it, but that is my prediction.
It's so sad.
And I was right.
Rest in peace. On God, I forgot that the dog was even in the movie for like most of it.
It's not like the dog didn't end up playing a really big part. He was like there in one scene, and then it's like you almost forgot he existed until he's like barking outside that door later, but you're like, oh, that's right, they have a dog.
Yeah. Even there, like at the very end of the movie, it's all like, oh shit, there's another character.
Yeah, I made a note at it. So when, Peter's in his bed and Steve comes in to check on him, and they're just kind of like, eh.
Yeah.
I put in my note was, no one is sad about this Ellen lady dying. Geez, grandma must have been a bitch. Judging from that eulogy, I'd say probably.
I hate that. But at about we cut to Annie and Charlie in Charlie's room. Charlie's pretty upset about her grandma dying. Annie makes a remark that Charlie was her grandmother's favorite.
Yes, yeah. I noticed that.
Are we still doing spoiler alerts?
I mean, I feel like wouldn't this whole thing be kind of laced with spoilers because of the way that film is?
Yeah. It's mostly foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention, if the listener hasn't watched this movie by now, they probably don't care.
Yeah.
How would you describe Charlie?
She looks like she's 80 years old.
And also 13.
It's weird.
I went with mentally disturbed and facially challenged.
Jesus.
Yeah, she looks like she opened the Ark of the Covenant just a little bit. And my note, okay, and they also, she was saying you never cried as a baby, and my note right there was, you never cried as a baby? Really? That sounds like a straight up lie that even this ancient-looking 9-year-old isn't buying.
Going back to the remark that Annie makes about Charlie, about her grandmother, favoring her the most. At the end of the movie, Pyman prefers the body of a man, right? And Charlie even says afterwards, Grandma wanted me to be a boy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And Annie's just like, that's weird.
That's an odd thing for you to say right now.
Yeah. And then about 30 seconds later, it cuts to some writing on the wall.
In the most literal sense.
Literally
writing on the wall.
And later on, we actually learn that this is part of the spell used to expel Peter out of his own body. And it's implied that the cult is like breaking into their home and writing these things. Because I don't know if you like listen to it, but just as the family's getting home, you can hear a lot of footsteps that's not theirs.
Oh.
So that means there were already people in the home as they were coming in.
I really like the shot of when Ellen appears in the corner of the room. That was super creepy. I like shrunk back into my chair a little bit. I was like, nope, nope.
I have a note about this. I said, this is a callback to Lights Out. This is how you do it.
Yes, because as soon as she turned the light on, it was just, there was nothing there. It was very, very similar.
I was like, at 12:43, Annie sees her mom in the room, and she just turns the light off. And she only turns it back on once.
One time.
That's all you needed, David F. Sandberg.
Sandberg.
While she's in her study, she's like going through her grandmother's stuff. She finds a letter, and at the end of the letter, it reads, "Our sacrifice will pale next to the rewards," implying that so long ago as this letter was written, the grandmother knew what would happen to her family, and she was okay with it.
It was in like a weird spiritualism book, wasn't it?
Yeah. No. It was
No?
I think it was in like a thing of pictures, right?
No, the spiritualism book was in with the books of their family's pictures.
Oh, yeah. After Annie exits her study and sees her mom, and she's all like, "Mom," it cuts to Peter in class, and I actually like this scene a lot because the teacher's blackboard is blocked mostly by Peter's crush's head, and the only text you can read is "escaping fate." And Peter's crush remarks about how Hercules thought he had control over his own fate. And this whole scene really is like an indirect comment of Peter and his family, as they can't control their own fate, but think they do.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, the teacher appears at the end in the cult.
Oh, you're right. Oh my gosh. Oh. I remember that now. I didn't make that connection. Yeah, you're right. Everything's coming together.
It's all coming together nicely.
Hello?
What?
Okay, so the sequence with the when the bird like smashes into the window, which I kind of expected because I saw the bird in the background and I was like, that bird's gonna hit the window, and it just slam, and I was like, yep, there it is.
That bird's gonna get fucking murked.
And then Charlie goes outside and she takes the pair of scissors off the thing, and I was like, don't you dare, don't you do it. And she did it. She takes the head off the bird with the scissors. and my note here was all right, let's put little Jeffrey Dahmer on some meds before this movie goes to shit more than it already has.
Oh no.
That was like really it was really gross. And like I know that was, you know, obviously it was supposed to be, but I was like, oh my god, like the movie had kind of been pretty subtle up until that point, and then it just kind of like hits you in the face with, oh, by the way, this kid's a psycho, and I was like, oh, okay, all right,
maybe not a psycho, but a little bit off.
I mean, my sister collected animal skulls for years, and she's perfectly fine.
She's in prison now.
No, soon.
She's been in rehab, yeah.
After Charlie cuts the head off of a pigeon, there is yet another person outside that is just waving to her.
Yeah. In the moment, I was like, what is going on? And then later I realized, oh, cultist.
Yep.
Those pesky cultists.
Annie begins researching apparitions, and Steve, her husband, receives word from the cemetery that Ellen, Annie's mom, her grave was desecrated, but he decides not to tell his wife.
Desecrated? What does that even mean?
It's like he's like, desecrated? What does that even mean? Except I know what it means because I just said it.
I also want to back up like 30 seconds because Annie is cleaning her house and she goes to her grandmother's room. And there is a triangle burned into the floor, and she doesn't react. But
and it was like a perfect triangle, and she was like, "Huh,
that's strange." But it's implied that the cult members have yet again broken into their house and done some sort of ritual in that room. And Annie even is like, "Were you doing something in there?" to her husband, and he's just like, "No." No. Steve gets word from the cemetery. The grandmother's grave was completely desecrated, but he decides not to tell Annie. And then Annie tells Steve she's going out to a movie, but actually attends a grief counseling support group. And when she arrives at the meeting, it's dark outside. Annie openly discusses her mother's mental health issues.
Right, which was the big exposition dump that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Including the dissociative identity disorder and dementia.
Yeah. And I just have a question as far as all that goes. Why not just say, hey, hon, I'm feeling really bad about this. I'm just going to a support group. And he'd be like, okay. Like, why not just tell him you're going to a support group?
It might be like a pride thing for her of like, I don't want to admit that I'm going through something like terrible.
And then admit it to a group of strangers, though.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of dumb.
It's easier to open up for strangers sometimes. I feel like it's something that's in common with all of the characters, though. You don't really see them talk about how they're feeling about anything.
The only normal person in this entire movie is Steve.
Steve, I love Steve.
Like that, he's the only normal human in this movie. It's just like,
oh, I kept imagining him as Ben Parker,
Yeah.
probably because he kept saying Peter.
oh yeah.
I actually have a note on the group counseling meeting and about how Annie's family has passed away. She says that her father has died of starvation and her brother had schizophrenia and hung himself. I believe it's implied here that both people were vessels of Paimon.
Oh, one of them said, "Stop trying to put people in me."
Yeah, and they chose to die to escape like the grasp of the demon. And she even remarks that like Peter basically wasn't around her grandmother a lot growing up, so that's why he's kind of normal. And Charlie was the one that she latched onto.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He says, got her fucking hooks into her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I believe it's implied that like the grandmother character is kind of like the conduit of like putting this demon into people.
Yeah. Well,
So-
it's implied that it was implied later that she was sort of the leader, because towards the end, remember there was that picture of her on the wall and the name under it said Queen.
Yeah.
So I think it was implied that she was like the leader. People weren't just like Queen.
Yes, Queen.
Yes, Queen.
Literally slay.
Literally kill your own family.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Peter's a little more normal. Really, his only problem is that his fake crying is kind of bad. But
Yeah.
Is that diagnosable?
But I believe that's what's implied there in that scene of like this is a generational thing. Like,
It's Hereditary.
yeah.
hey!
Roll credits.
End of the episode. Thank you, everyone.
I lost my place.
We were at the Pride rally. No. We were at the
I lost my place.
Alcoholics Anonymous for sad people? What is it?
I don't
Support
remember.
group.
Okay, I
support
don't remember
group.
if it's a hard cut or not. But the next scene, we see Charlie in her room, and there's a strange lighting phenomenon that happens here, and which I also believe to be like the actual demon himself. Because after every single time that pops up throughout the movie, someone stops what they're doing completely to do something else.
Yeah, I did notice that. Yeah. And my note here was, Charlie looks older in literally every scene. Why is she aging so rapidly?
She's got that demon skin.
Right.
Easy, breezy, demon skin.
And then, so Charlie, she like goes outside, and I think she was heading towards the treehouse. No, she actually got to the treehouse, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure.
I think she was in her. No, she was in her treehouse, I think. But she's up in there just like making toys. And also, there's a very sad Easter egg. She has pictures of the dog.
Oh.
And one of them is obscured. And the next picture that she has written down is the dog laying down.
I'm upset.
So I think even that is foreshadowed that, yes, the dog dies.
Frick.
But this lighting phenomenon happens, and it coaxes her outside and a little bit down like the driveway, where we see presumably a cult member or a hallucination of her grandmother out in a field burning something in some sort of ritual.
I thought it was her grandmother.
I thought it was her grandmother too, but I like have a little bit of doubt.
I couldn't really tell, honestly. It seemed like it could go either way.
Yeah. And then Annie comes storming outside and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Okay, and my note here was bad parenting. You don't ask your child if they're an idiot. That's not what a good parent does when their child makes a mistake.
Agreed.
Bad parent.
They go back
Annie sucks.
Annie's a bad mom.
Annie's a bad mom. Well, not
2 stars.
Well, it'll be it'll be revealed later that, she has problems and almost burned her children alive. But spoiler alert for later, yes, she's a bad parent.
And then the gallery owner contacts Annie about her progress on the new works, which includes a piece featuring Ellen, I guess. I think Ellen's her grandmother, right?
Yeah, is that the one with the bed? And
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot what the grandmother was named, so I was reading this and I was all like, she's doing a piece on Ellen DeGeneres?
Yeah. What exactly is she doing? Like an art piece on her life? Is that what she's doing?
Yeah, this is the weird thing to me.
I think so.
Who is paying her to do art of her own life?
Don't question it. It's a movie.
I guess maybe because she's just really good at it.
Yeah. It might. Yeah, that might be the case where like she's so good at it that an art gallery was all like, "Can you do some on the rest of your life?" Because maybe she had like an interesting upbringing.
Yeah. Headcanon. It's the cult.
Probably.
You know what? You're probably right. But the I kind of wondered. I was like, okay, so she's really good at making these tiny models, and she probably got famous for making tiny models, and then maybe a gallery contacted her, and she decided that this next project would just be, her life. Maybe that was the whole thing. That's kind of what I assumed it was.
Right.
But anyway, she's very good at the models. She is.
She's very good.
He's very good.
Then Peter pops up. He gets a text message from his friends that's saying, "We gotta go to a party. Bring your dick."
Oh yeah.
I was just like, wow, awesome friend.
It's an A1 man. And he goes to his mom to ask if he can go to a party, and she's like, "Are you gonna drink?" And he goes, "No." And she goes, "That's bullshit."
No. He technically he says, what was it? We're not even old enough to buy drinks. And then she said, "That's a crock of shit. Are you going to drink?" He's like, "Well, I said no." He never really said no.
Annie makes the weirdest decision here. She asks if Charlie's going.
Yeah.
I don't understand any of Annie's dialogue. Okay, like, she's such a weird person. She has such weird tactics for parenting. I don't understand her, like, at all. I questioned every parenting decision she ever made in this movie.
I agree.
Like, her and I would just not get along. Like, I was just like, Annie, oh my god, what is wrong with you? And not only, like, it gets to the point where she's, like, harassing her children. And I'm like, Annie, leave them alone.
Annie, chill out.
It's like, and then she's, like, in therapy, and she's like, oh my god, I don't understand why my children resent me. And I was like, maybe it's because you're a psycho.
I think it's also, like, the narcissism of herself. Like, she wants to be different than her upbringing was, to the point where, like, she's micromanaging everything that her children are doing in a way that it comes off as abusive.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think micromanaging is a very, very good word for it, because, that's what she was doing.
The weird thing, though, is she literally
micromanagement.
She like condemns that exact type of parenting in her eulogy to her mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then she didn't realize how similar she was to her own mother.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like something every child kind of goes through. Like, if you resent your parents, of course you're going to become like them because you're made from them. You know?
Well,
not in every case.
Yeah.
But more, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. You're going to be more like them than you realize.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to go for.
Yeah.
I certainly hope not.
Oh, God, too dark. But anyway, Annie asks Peter if Charlie's going with him, and he's just like, what? And we're all like, what?
Everyone's like, what?
And Annie forces Peter to take Charlie with him to the party, which is an odd character choice.
Doesn't she also kind of force Charlie to go?
Yeah.
Well, kind of.
She was like, you're going!
And then, flustered at having to monitor his sister, Peter blows off Charlie so he can smoke with his crush and their friends or whatever.
Oh, you forgot the shot that, conveys that this is not only a high school party, this is a high school nut chopping party.
They have so many nuts, dude!
Also, the
Who needs that many nuts?
yeah, that was weird. I honestly thought they had such a close up on the knife. I was like, someone's gonna cut their hand off. But the
Cut their nuts off.
like, okay. So I had a couple note before they got to the party. I was like, they were in the car. My note at 28 minutes was, I swear to God, if Charlie clicks her tongue one more time, I'll start rooting for her to die in this movie. And at 6 seconds later, my note is, and she did. All right, I'm rooting for her to die. And then at 28 minutes and 48 seconds, I was like, the music at this party makes me want to die. And then it cuts back to the scene where my note here is Annie's having a weird face-off with this toy person, so that's strange. It was the part where she was like looking at her models and that little figure was standing in the doorway, and I think it was a model of her mom. And she was like, she was having like a stare down with it, like, you blink.
Oh, that's interesting.
And honestly, as much as I don't like Charlie very much, I think she and I would totally vibe at a party, just standing there looking sadly down at our plates together. That was a big mood.
Oh no.
we both would have just been like,
I just want to be left alone to make my toys.
I just hate parties, so I totally understood where she was coming from.
If your first inclination when you get to a party is, I need to stay here for a long time, we're not friends.
Define a long time.
If your immediate reaction is not, I need to leave now, you're not a like, come on.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely my reaction. My reaction is like, I go get food and I go find a corner to sit in.
You go find the nearest dog.
Yes, correct, if there's a dog nearby. And then I just sit there and I'm like, I want to go.
And then you're all like, you want to go too, buddy, to the dog? And he's like, yeah.
He's like, yeah.
And then you're left questioning, why is this dog talking?
And then 5 minutes after that, you're hijacking your parents' car and riding off into the sunset with your talking dog.
That's almost what happens in this movie. But,
which we should get back to because this is a review of the movie. So,
but as we know, Charlie's allergic to nuts. But many of the...
Which is kind of ironic considering everyone in her family is nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But, what's his name? Peter? Yeah.
Peter.
He's like, just fucking eat something. I don't care.
Go get some chocolate cake.
Go get some chocolate cake.
I gotta go smoke weed.
Cake, it's gonna be gone soon. I'll be gone for 2 minutes. Just stand over there.
He says it's gonna be gone soon? I don't remember that, which is weird because I had like 5 cakes out.
Yeah.
He says the cake's probably gonna be gone soon, so she has to hurry and go so that way he can smoke weed.
Yeah. But unknowingly, Charlie eats the chocolate cake containing the nuts that she's allergic to, and she begins choking and experiences like an anaphylactic shock reaction.
Yeah.
And it had been previously established that she often travels without an EpiPen for some reason.
These are just irresponsible parents.
Yeah.
Correct. And also, it kind of... I was thinking back to the funeral scene about the nuts thing, and where she's eating the bar, and Steve's like, does that have nuts in it? And she's like, no. And then they turn around and start walking, and Annie comes up, and she's like, does that have nuts in it? We don't have the EpiPen. And the only thing Steve says is, I know. Like, he doesn't say, no, it doesn't have nuts. We're good. He's just like, I know. Like, what? How is that an appropriate response to the question? But anyway, we're way back.
And also, why would you buy your kid a chocolate bar that might have nuts in it if you know they're allergic?
I don't know.
Maybe she stole it. It seems like neither of them are aware of how she got it. She accepts candies from strangers?
Maybe they had free chocolate at the funeral or something.
Hey, this family sucks.
Yes, they do. And as parents, they should have an EpiPen on them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they should make sure that she's always got one in her pocket.
Right.
And when Annie said that they're going to the party, Annie should have been like, hey, Peter, here's an EpiPen, just in case.
Yeah.
Like, these parents are so irresponsible.
But also, like, it kind of works out in like, the free will, or not having free will aspect of it. Because, in a way, it was kind of pre-planned.
Yeah.
But
I feel like with the amount of nuts that they had, though, she would have just blown up like a balloon as she stepped into that party.
She ignores her reaction for so fucking long.
Yes, I know. It's so irritating.
She's like, this is fine.
She's just
I'll
like
just drink
making
water.
her toys choking to death. And she goes upstairs and she's like sitting in the entrance of the room Peter's in smoking, and she's all like, my throat's getting bigger.
Isn't that funny?
And Peter just is like losing his mind. He picks her up and he's like running out to the car and he's like, we're gonna be at the hospital soon. And Charlie's like kicking around in the back seat. Peter's going like 90 miles an hour down this road, and the light pole that had a cult symbol etched into the back of it, there is a dead deer now in front of it. And Peter swerves as Charlie's sticking her head out of a window, and he violently decapitates her on this pole.
And honestly, yeah, that moment after that happened, and Peter came to a stop in the car and was just sitting there, I paused the movie, and I was just staring at the screen like agape. I was like, just staring at the screen.
I believe I laughed out loud.
Oh, I did too, but like also, I really like the facial acting Alex does in this scene here, because it like perfectly conveys like confusion, shock, panic. This scene is basically where all of his acting is.
Pretty much. He's not very good at the crying thing.
Yeah,
he's like,
but he
crying,
whispers. But he whispers, "You're gonna be okay, Charlie," and he just drives home. He doesn't even look in the back seat. And
yeah.
I really love this scene. He just walks into his room and he lays down, and it cuts to a close-up of his own face, and we hear in the background Annie getting ready to go to the store or wherever. Yeah, she was going to the store.
Yeah, she was asking Steve if he wanted anything or whatever. Yeah, I had subtitles on.
I did too.
Yay, subtitle buddies.
Who doesn't watch things with subtitles on?
Freaks. That's who.
But we hear Annie breaking down because she finds Charlie's body.
Yeah.
And I actually super love this scene because, one, we don't need to see it.
Yeah, we know exactly what it is.
And two, I don't know what the fuck Ari Aster did, but she sounded like she was crying for real.
Yeah. Honestly, this woman deserved an Oscar.
This is on. I have a note here. This is the most realistic crying I've ever heard in a movie.
Yeah. I was straight up like, did you stab her? Like, I don't know how you got her to do that.
They told her she was getting fired. But I love the simplicity of just like not even having to see the body.
Yeah, though we do see the head in the dirt.
Yeah, it immediately hard cuts.
Oh yeah.
To her fucking skull just being decayed.
Yeah, and literally that was at 37 minutes and 37 seconds. The only thing I have in my notes right there is holy shit. Like, that's the only thing in my notes.
Yeah.
And then a minute after that, where, you know, we see Annie breaking down more, I put, well, this movie is just fun for the whole family, isn't it?
Oh my god. It cuts to the family holding a funeral for Charlie. Steve looks through Charlie's sketchbook of drawings, and Peter experiences a panic attack while smoking marijuana. And I actually have a note here. He mimics exactly what Charlie said when she was having her like reaction.
Yeah.
And also, one of the guys in this group appears in the cult at the end.
Oh, so he was just playing a douchey teenager. Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was the long-haired dude on the left, at the very left.
Oh.
He appears at the end in the cult. So
that's a nice detail.
And it hard cuts again to fuck. Where am I? At about 50 minutes in, she's working on her miniatures, and something just pushes a paint bottle over onto Joan's note, making Annie remember that, you know, she has someone to talk to.
And there's also, like, okay, I want to talk to the viewer at home for a second, because, listener, don't put a space heater that close to your bed. Ever. Unless you like catching on fire while you're asleep, then it's fine.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for the tension in this movie. Like, it's so prevalent and constant, and I loved that there weren't stupid jump scares happening all the time because it would ruin the atmosphere.
Yeah. There was another thing I noticed with how they built tension in such a subtle way that I actually didn't catch it until this watch through. It's so quiet. And if you're watching this through headphones, you can hear it. There's an arpeggiating, like, bass that sounds like a heartbeat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did notice that.
And it's kind of like a fast beating heartbeat, and it kind of like builds to the tension of like what's gonna happen.
With a jump scare, you like release the tension, you know? And that's what I really like about this movie, because they build up that tension and then they don't release it with a scare. They just let it sit. They let the tension sit there for such a long time. They let it sit there, you know, minutes upon minutes. You know, they don't just go, boo, ha, gotcha. You know, they let the tension sit in the air, and you're just sitting in your seat like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's great. It's awesome.
I also just realized in my notes I skipped a whole scene. Peter drives home in the dark. Annie's grieving alone, sitting in the car in the driveway, and she just leaves. She goes to her grief support group meeting, but when she gets there, she's all like, never mind. And as she's trying to leave, this lady pulls her over, and she's all like, hey, aren't you that one sad lady? And they have a grief contest there in the parking lot where Annie's like, my daughter died. She was 13. And Joan's just like, my son died.
And my grandson. They drowned.
They were 9.
Yeah. I wanted Annie to be like, oh yeah, my daughter got decapitated. So
by my son.
And I had to see her headless body. There we go.
So my grief wins. Stupid.
Exactly. But Joan confides in Annie about the loss of their own children and grandson and their family or whatever. Annie returns home. Steve makes a pass at her, but Annie's just like, nah. And Annie goes to sleep in the attic, and Peter hears Charlie's clucking noises.
Yes, and my note here was, oh my God, I thought I was free of the tongue clicking, but she's doing it after she's dead. This is going to be a really long movie.
Oh no.
In all seriousness, no, that was a really good scare.
After Peter hears Charlie's clucking noises, he sees what thinks might be a vision of his dead sister in his room, but it appears to be his own hoodie in like a corner. And that's something that like everyone's experienced. Have you ever been alone in your room at night? That shit gets so scary.
Yeah, and you're just like you see something that almost looks like like a silhouette shape or something, and you're just like, oh my god, Mom!
Oh my god.
It's rough.
And then it goes to the next day, and he's working on her miniatures, and a paint bottle gets pushed over somehow onto Joan's note, and Annie remembers that, oh yeah, I have a friend, which Annie decides to go hang out with Joan after that. And after she gets to Joan's apartment, Annie tells Joan about the sleepwalking incident in which she doused Peter and Charlie in paint thinner
and was seconds away from lighting them on fire.
Like, light them up. And then Annie explains that her relationships with her children after that were never the same, which makes more sense as to like why she's more cold to her children, because like none of them are ever responding to like her in a way that she wants.
Right, but like, but it's weird because she blames them for that, and I think that's not.
Yeah.
You know, not that it's not realistic, because yeah, I'm sure in that situation you'd have people that would, you know, pass the blame on to their kids for something like that, for, you know, it's like, oh, they don't like me anymore, and then they would blame their kids. But it's like, it makes sense, and really she shouldn't have been blaming her kids. It's like, I lit you on fire very nearly, and I don't get why you're mad.
Right.
It's like, lady, come on. It's just another reason for me to not like Annie.
Yeah, Annie kind of sucks.
Annie sucks.
But there was something weird in this scene that I found that like I just made a note about, but I didn't know what it meant. She finds something like odd in her tea because they make a point to like show it to us.
Yeah.
So like I think it might have possibly been like some sort of like potion or whatever the fuck to like make her more susceptible to like grief
or crazy.
and just Or crazy. Yeah, or crazy.
Could have been a hallucinogenic.
Yeah, but afterwards, Steve finds Annie constructing like a disturbing diorama of where Charlie died.
Yeah.
Steve, Annie, and Peter have like an awkward dinner in which Annie blames her son for Charlie's death.
Yeah, and okay, so like a couple things. Number one, it seems really weird to me that Peter wasn't given any time off school to grieve. Like, that's not normal.
Oh,
No.
yeah.
So an explanation of that would have been good. Like, even a scene where, people are like, hey, you can take some time off school to grieve, and he decides not to. So, like, that would have been, like, an explanation for why he was not given time off school would have been good. For the part where she's making the little scene, I was like, okay, that's weird that you're making a tiny little scene of the accident in such detail, Annie. Why not just put a little tiny model of a bird head in the Charlie doll's pocket so we can independently verify that you've snapped?
Oh my god.
Did you have anything else to say about the dinner?
I love this scene so much. Only because of how Toni Collette acts as Annie in this scene, because again, she's like on some next level shit, because just listening to it sounds like the most realistic fight in a movie I've ever seen.
Honestly.
And the dad's just like doing what every dad should do in that situation, where he just keeps his mouth shut.
Well, until he tells them both to stop it, but
As soon as it reaches critical mass, he's like, hey, wait a minute.
it was like Thanksgiving dinner in the Gambino Mafia household.
And then at the end of this fight, Peter responds by reminding Annie that she was the one that forced Charlie to go to this party.
Which
Yeah.
is technically true.
This is where it seemed like the weird controlling parts that she was complaining about her mother. Like, that's where it seemed like she was really fulfilling that to me. Like,
Yeah.
where it clicked.
Yeah. And also, Toni Collette does more awesome face acting here. She can contort her face into just the ugliest things.
It's a skill.
And it's so good. And I also have another note about this
She
scene.
was like
is after-
scary.
She's freaky,
I was
dude.
like, oh my god, someone pepper spray her.
I have another note about this scene. Is after this big fight, there's a wide shot of the dining room, and I feel like it's reinforcing that like they're still being toyed with.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's another dollhouse shot. But afterwards, an unconscionable amount of time passes in this movie, and they never tell you how much. But the next day, I assume,
It seems, yeah.
Annie runs into Joan at the art supply store, and Joan excitedly explains to Annie that she's attended an open seance that changed her skepticism about psychics.
My note here was, Joan really reminds me of someone I know, and it's weird, and she's so handsy. Oh my god, lady, lay off.
She's every homeschooling mom. Joan tells Annie that a medium was able to conjure her dead grandson Louis, and taught Joan how to conduct the seance as well. Joan has a chalkboard in the trunk of her car. I made a note about this. It is the same chalkboard that she later claims that was Louis'. So that means that like she was already pre-planning this to get her to go to this.
And the whole conjuring scene, I was like, this was my first watch through of this movie, and so I made a prediction that was apparently correct, even though it was actually more of a joke. I said, oh my god, she summoned a demon, didn't she? And it was more of a joke, but it actually turned out to be right.
Joan invites Annie over to witness this seance firsthand, and Joan seemingly makes contact with Louis, who uses a glass and a chalkboard to communicate. And I love their use of practical effects here. I don't know how they put a magnet inside of chalk, but props to them. Joan assures Annie that she can conduct a similar conjuring herself by using a personal item from the deceased by reciting a cryptic incantation and making sure that her entire family is in the house during summoning.
Huh.
Also, I don't know when the time code was, but prior to this, Steve makes a comment on how the house smells bad.
Oh.
So I think by that point, the grandmother's body was already in the house.
That makes sense.
But on the way home, Annie hears a clucking sound while driving home afterwards, and then you're all like, fuck.
And that was a solid scare. And I think directly after that, we move into the part where she has that, like, dream.
Yes. Yeah. Annie wakes up that night to find a swarm of ants leading into Peter's dead body, and wakes from a sleeping trance over her son's bed, prompting a conversation with Peter that I thought was very disjointed and weird at first. It was very dreamlike dialogue.
Yeah, it was very dreamlike dialogue, and it made sense because at first I was like, "Who the hell wrote this dialogue?" And then she wakes up, and I was like, "Oh, now it makes sense."
Right. And Peter asks why Annie's seemingly scared of him, and Annie involuntarily confesses that she tried to abort him as a baby.
Yeah.
And she never wanted to be Peter's mother, and suddenly wakes to discover that she was experiencing a vision within a vision. That's some like Inception shit. And at some point, I think at about an hour and 20 minutes, there's a third and fourth writing on the wall. It keeps cutting back to like these like incantations being placed in this home.
Yeah. The attempted seance scene at about like an hour and 15. I am supposing, because they all thought it was Charlie's spirit, but it was more, like once you like start to realize, oh, it's not Charlie, it's actually a demon, and Charlie never came back.
Yeah.
The movie intentionally misleads you to thinking that it's going to be the ghost of Charlie, and I really like that it did that, because you're kind of like, oh, I know where this is going, it's a ghost of Charlie and blah blah blah, and at the end you're like, oh, Charlie actually died and there was never any ghost to begin with. And I think that was a really, really nice way of doing that. So Steve goes over to close the window, and Annie's like, no, I don't want to change anything. I don't want to mess up the ritual. But then she moves the table. I'm like, make up your mind.
I would also like to note that they have a shot where she's behind a closed door doing this seance, or not the seance, but like the incantation to make it work.
Yeah.
I blasted my volume so I could hear what she was saying. But if you listen closely, she says Paimon 3 times.
Oh, dang.
So I think in this scene she summoned... Is it Paimon or Paimon?
I think it's Paimon.
I thought it was Paimon.
I think at the
Paimon.
end of the movie, Joan says Paimon.
Okay, that makes more sense. My brain's just having an aneurysm.
Paimon.
And that, now that you mentioned that, it still calls back to the eulogy. My mom has her private rituals.
Yeah.
She's becoming her mother. She's like, she makes toys. It's so weird to think about, because she makes little miniatures, and Charlie makes her a little toy.
Right.
And it's like, this is all something that they have in common.
And to put a little bit more context into the seance scene, with the incantation, we actually needed like Charlie's sketchbook. Claiming she summoned Charlie, Annie excitedly wakes both her husband and her son for the seance, and Charlie seemingly possesses Annie in like the most unnerving way, to where Annie's just screaming, "Mom!" But Steve snaps Annie out of her trance by like dousing her with water, and Peter just cries from being confused.
Honestly, I was trying really hard to take that scene seriously, but Peter's kind of terrible crying kind of destroyed the scene for me, because he's a good actor in a lot of ways, but his crying is not good. And
No.
it's not good. It's kind of funny, actually. And so when he was like crying, it kind of destroyed the scene for me. It also kind of destroyed the dream sequence for me too, because it was just so silly.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate.
He's a better crier when you can't see his face.
Yeah.
So like when he buries his face into his dad's like shoulder, I kind of believed it more then, but that's only because I couldn't see it.
Right. Yeah. The visual kind of was like, okay.
But all of that wraps up, and the next day during school, Peter sees that strange light phenomenon again that Charlie previously saw in her bedroom. And Peter notices his reflection is looking back at him with a completely different expression.
Yeah, that was nice.
And then it cuts back to Steve and Annie again. Steve admonishes Annie for Peter becoming convinced that a vengeful spirit is threatening him, because they got a call from the school.
Yeah, he like freaks out, and yeah.
And Annie trashes her studio in frustration and accidentally breaks a tiny model chair after another voicemail from her gallery pressures her about providing new pieces.
And I had this weird moment where I was watching Annie like smash the project, and then like the only thing I was thinking, it was weird because the only thing I was thinking I was thinking about the guy who was leaving the message. You know, he was like, "Hey, it's Patrick from the gallery," and so I was just sitting there watching Annie freak out and smash her project, and I was like, "Man, Patrick seems like such a nice person. Can we meet Patrick in this movie? I need a likable character."
That was actually a director cameo.
Oh,
so that was your boy Ari Aster.
Ari Aster. Ari, you've got a very pleasant voice.
And I also thought that it was funny that when she starts smashing her project, she very conveniently smashes the two parts that are not supported by support beams.
She was like, just gonna go around those.
I don't want to break my knuckles.
Right. I noticed in that scene, the thing that she was smashing, at least the first thing that she was smashing, was the model of the funeral.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
If you set something off in Act 1, you have to pay it off in Act 3.
That's right.
Charlie's spirit supernaturally starts drawing in her old sketchbook.
Well, supposedly Charlie's spirit. Yeah.
Supposedly.
Yeah. Honestly, whether it was Charlie's spirit, I guess you could actually put up for debate.
She could be trying to warn them.
Yeah.
I have a theory that Charlie never existed.
What?
I feel like her soul, because it's revealed at the end of the movie anyway that she was Payman. I have a theory that her soul was replaced at birth.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh.
So that's why she never cried when she was born.
And that's why she was such a little freak. Okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like that theory.
Ellen was super protective over Charlie because, one, she was supposed to be a boy, and two, this was the only child Ellen had access to.
Yeah.
But supposedly Charlie's spirit starts supernaturally drawing in her old sketchbook. We don't see what it is yet. And Peter sees a vision of his dead sister in the corner, and her head falls off, turning into a recreation ball on the floor, which I thought was super creepy and also a super cool transition.
It was nicely done. It was very smooth.
It was terrifying. All of this happens before being choked in his bed
by a pair of arms.
And I think by this point, Annie has started being possessed because afterwards Peter accuses his own mother of sleepwalking and attacking him again. I don't even think it's sleepwalking anymore because it's happened too many times.
Yeah. Honestly, maybe she said in the past that she had been sleepwalking. Maybe it was never sleepwalking. Maybe it was always possession.
Yeah.
Okay, but maybe the one where she's trying to burn the kids and herself alive was trying to escape from this.
Maybe.
Now that I think about it.
And I also thought it was weird because, in this scene, too, Annie's like, don't tell Steve. And it's like, why can't you guys just be
honest?
Transparent?
Why can't you guys communicate like a family?
Poor Steve.
Poor Steve. He's the only normal person.
Annie goes on to explain that something supernatural is happening in the house, and she's the only one who can stop it. The window above Peter's bed has a mark that looks similar to the one in Charlie's classroom when struck by the bird.
That bird was the unrealized hero of this movie.
Yeah.
And, maybe you might be right. She actually might have been possessed at that point because, with the journal burning and then it starts to light her arm on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Afterwards, Annie returns to Joan for help, but no one's there. And she doesn't go inside Joan's residence at all. But the camera shows us Joan's place, which is just covered head to toe in, cult shit. We see the cult symbol, in a cabinet. We see the same triangle that we saw in Annie's grandmother's room, or Annie's mother's room, and toys reminiscent of Charlie's. And Annie goes back home, and she starts rifling through her grandmother's... I keep saying grandmother. Through her mother's things, and finds photos of Ellen just doing cult things with Joan.
Yeah, just kind of together, doing cult stuff.
Hanging out, sacrificing,
the usual.
Sacrificing with the boys. Opening up a cold boy with the ones.
Oh no. I'm gonna start a new cult based upon the ones. That sounds very ominous.
And here we learn that the symbol that is associated with the cult is the symbol of Payman, one of the 8 kings of hell. We also learn here that Payman prefers a male body. And
Weirdo.
we also hear, yeah, he's like, I want to be in a dude.
I'm tired of my feminine figure.
I hate this hourglass figure.
I want to be muscular.
So here we find Annie discovering Ellen's headless corpse in the attic.
Yeah.
And first off, I want to call back to a little bit earlier. If you smell a dead body in your house, why would you not go find where it is?
Honestly, that's fair. Though, they might have assumed, as I have assumed before, that when you kind of have that death smell in your house somewhere, you're like, oh, maybe something crawled under the house and died or something, you know?
My
Yeah,
uncle had a squirrel that forced itself into the fan blades of a central cooling system.
Wow.
So that was horrifying to see.
Not as horrifying about... Hold on, I'm having a stroke.
The part where Joan is shouting at Peter from across the street. She's like, Zentony! Dagdony! A paragon! Part of me wanted Peter to stand up and start shouting random things back. Like, Albuquerque, Egypt, Kazakhstan. See, I can do it too, you psycho.
Adjectives! Nouns!
Race car! Peach tea!
Aspect ratio!
Pathologist!
Oh my god. But I also have another note about this. Everything that she's shouting...
Abiogenesis.
Oh my god. Evangelion! But I also noticed that a lot of the things that she's yelling at Peter are things that were like carved into the walls in the house.
Oh.
Was she like doing a spell or something, I guess?
The spell, I think, was to literally force him out of his own body. I think that's why she was saying get out so much.
Okay.
She was trying to like weaken him down and force himself out of his own body to make room.
Makes sense. I mean, she's a bitch, but it makes sense.
Yeah. After she yells, I expel you at him from a distance at school behind a fence during class. Also, she's got some lungs.
Yeah. Peter's just like, well, I guess I can't come back to school anymore. I'm expelled.
This loud bitch told me I couldn't come back.
Not that I wanted to. My grades aren't very good.
But after he hears I expel you, Peter hears Charlie's click again. And Peter acts possessed and suddenly bashes his own head into his desk and snaps out of his trance with cries of terror and pain.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug. I mean, we saw him doing stuff before. I mean, who's to say he wasn't on cocaine?
Yeah.
We had that blue flash again, right? Like that weird light effect?
Yes, that was something that, like, for some reason this summary skipped over completely. But we see that blue flash again, and it takes him to, like, this hallway, and he sees a teacher, like, doing the come hither motion.
Also a cultist.
Also a cultist. And in there, he gets possessed again, and he smashes his head against a desk. And there's also it's just a tiny error that I caught for some reason. What I noticed when he smashes his head into the desk, it's padded.
Oh.
It's only there for a split second, but I was like, you can't hide that from me.
I went to film school. You can't hide that from me.
I notice props because I look for them.
Gotta suspend your disbelief, man.
I can't.
Okay.
As soon as you learn about film structure, it's impossible.
That's fair.
In this scene, Annie stands out in the pouring rain below the treehouse with Ellen's scrapbook, and we see that Peter's room behind her in the real house does not exist.
What?
Does not exist in the sense that it's not there?
Nope.
Oh.
It's not there.
I did not see that.
But by then, Steve brings Peter home, and Ellen? Annie approaches the car and is drying no sign of the downpour, by the way. And Annie tells Steve that Ellen's corpse is in their attic, but is now decapitated. And Annie shows Steve the photographs of where Joan and Ellen are wearing the seal of payment, which is weird because he has no reference of who Joan is or who she looks like. He's never met this character.
Yeah, she was kind of trying to explain who Joan was to him, but
even
not
then,
very well.
He's still like, Yeah, but even then, he's still like, man, why can't you motherfuckers just be normal?
Why am I the only normal person in this movie?
Annie explains that her family became cursed, and she tried contacting Charlie. Annie also explains that the connection to Charlie's sketchbook, adding that Steve needs to destroy it in order to save Peter, because she's showing Steve the pictures inside the sketchbook finally, and it's pictures of Peter dying. And Peter sleeps in his bedroom in the background, and he's just like vibing.
He's just out, man. Just out.
So, disbelieving her wild claims, Steve accuses Annie of digging up Ellen's grave.
And just being crazy in general.
Which is, a smart person think.
It's fair.
But he refuses to throw the sketchbook in the fire because Annie's like freaking out. She's like, I'll catch on fire if I do it. You have to do it. So he's like, nah, dog, no.
He's like, girl, you must be out of your damn mind.
So I'm like, damn, I married a crazy bitch.
Why did I do this? I have so many regrets. Could have been an engineer.
Annie finally breaks, and she takes the book herself, and she throws it into the fire, presuming it's going to kill her, but instead Steve catches on fire.
Which, to my knowledge, went totally unexplained.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that ever connected?
I have a note!
Yay!
This was done purely to weaken her to the point where she would be susceptible to be possessed.
By whom?
By Pie Man again, because as she's watching Steve...
Pie Man.
Pie Man. As she's watching Steve burn to death, we see that light again.
Oh.
And that's why her face goes completely blank. So that was done purely just to get her weak enough to the point where she could be possessed and influenced to push Peter to the lengths that he goes to.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Right. I guess you have to be emotionally susceptible to being possessed.
Correct.
Is apparently the rule in this movie.
Yes.
Honestly, at the point where... Okay, so the point where Peter wakes up and we see Annie fluttering across the room like a confused moth was the moment that I couldn't take this movie seriously anymore.
That was so fucking funny,
It was
dude.
the funniest thing. I had to pause the movie because I was laughing so hard, because it's like when your mom comes into the room to check on you but doesn't really want you to notice. So she's like being as quiet as possible, and Annie's like, I'll just float.
I would also like to add that it's hard to see, but when he's waking up, she's on the ceiling the entire time.
She's on the ceiling. I saw her up there, and I was like, oh, she's on the ceiling. And then the moment she started fluttering across the room, I was like, okay, I'm done with this movie.
All right, I'm out. Okay, having seen with his possessed mother now hovering across the screen, Peter gets up to search the house, and Peter leaves the room, and he finds his father's charred corpse. And possessed in the background, you can just see her on the roof still,
chilling in the corner,
just chilling, just
vibing up in the corner, like, hey, it's a lot warmer up here. Heat rises, bro.
Peter hears noise, and he turns around, and he sees a fully butt-ass naked man.
Finally.
And I started to laugh so hard. I just couldn't take it seriously. And it took me back to episode 3 when you said if someone's naked in my house, they'd better be paying rent. It just took me back to that moment, and I just started laughing so hard. I just couldn't do it, dude. I couldn't do it.
I would also like to add an error here. As soon as Annie jumps up and furiously chases him, he doesn't turn around to look if that's happening. He just starts running. And he climbs up into the attic, and Annie jumps up and furiously is pounding her head on the attic door. And I thought that shit's terrifying.
He heard the soundtrack, and that's why he started to run.
He was like, "Oh, that's the music cue.
Gotta go." And I'm glad you guys found that scary when she was banging her head on the ceiling, but I was laughing through that whole sequence too.
It was unnerving because of Peter just being all can you please stop?
Yeah. It helps if you just picture if you mentally replace the soundtrack with some metal music, then she's just headbanging.
Yeah. I also want to go back. I want to go back to the scene where he's finally running away from his mom. I want to take the music out and just put like the Sonic music. The Green Hill Zone.
So good. And like he's up in that attic, and I understand that he's upset and he's crying, but I've never seen someone drool so much and not wipe their mouth unless they were like 4. So Peter, you're 16, you have no excuse.
You're also terrified though. You're not going to think about wiping your mouth.
I would.
I wouldn't be. I'd be like, hey, maybe the spit's going to be a little bit distracting for whoever's trying to murder me.
It's going to be distracting for the audience.
If they're naked in my house, they better be paying rent.
Yeah, and they weren't. That was the issue. He's just like, who? If he had known these people, he would have been like, hey. But, obviously he didn't.
Who's naked in my house for free?
Your name's not on the lease.
But Peter's up in the attic, and he turns around, and he sees candles and a photo of his own face with the eyes punched out. And Ellen's body is gone. And I would also like to point out in this scene, when he's turning around to, like, see the, like, candle-lit circle, before they even establish that they're there, there's already someone right behind him.
Yeah, when he first went up in the attic and he turned around and was walking towards the circle of candles, I was like, there's a naked person in the corner.
Yeah.
Hello.
I missed that, and I've seen this movie 5 times.
Really? Oh.
But he finds Ellen's body's gone, which is weird that he would even be trying to look for it in the first place. Why is this summary implying that?
That doesn't make sense. I think he saw the candles and he walked over. I don't think it had anything to do with the body.
I want to talk to whoever wrote the summary. But he finds the picture of himself and he hears a squelching noise. And he looks up and he sees his mother hovering above his head, sawing her head off.
With fishing wire, I think?
I think
was it fishing wire?
It was a fishing wire, or it was like one of those like wire saws.
Yeah, I thought it was like, yeah.
They live in a heavily wooded area, so I'm assuming it's like a wire saw for trees.
That could be it for sure. And I'm sorry, I couldn't take this scene seriously either. When the lights came on and there were naked people standing around like waving to Peter, it was kind of like it was like his parents had decided to gift him some hookers for his 18th birthday or something. It was absolutely bizarre.
And they had to do it on the cheap.
Yeah, and then Peter just screams, like a really short scream. He was just like, ah! And then he just leaps out the window. I literally burst out laughing. And I was just imagining the hookers standing around like, Bart, you think we should have eased into this evening? He's like, yeah, you're probably right, Donna.
He probably would have been more calm if his dad was all like, here, son, go clap some cheeks.
Shouldn't have done it as a surprise party. We should have told him we were doing this. Yeah.
But
gotta fix that window.
But Peter's head hits the ground below, which kills him. And here we see that light again. And I think I was right in assuming that this is actually like Payman's like soul.
Yeah. At this point, I figured that's probably what it was, because it goes onto his back, like it focuses in this little beam of light on his back, and then it kind of dissipates as it goes into him. So yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was Payman's his soul, or his spirit, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and Peter rises after the oddly glowing light seemingly hovers and disappears into his body, and Peter follows his mother's headless, floating corpse into the treehouse.
Which was also kind of hilarious to me.
Oh, that shit was hilarious.
It just kind of like floated up into the house. I was just...
An assembly of mostly devil worshippers in various states of undress greet Peter inside the treehouse. Here we see...
It's totally somebody's kink.
Totally something.
How do you know that they're mostly devil worshippers? Like, what are the other people worshipping?
I'm just reading off of this, man.
Oh, okay. I thought, were they just there for the party, just hang out, like, we're naked?
Well,
some of them were
true.
Some of them were just nudists.
Straight up, yeah. They saw like a bunch of nude cultists running around, and they're like, "Nude party!"
Oh no!
And they all just ran in, dude.
Imagine their embarrassment.
They were like, "Oh, you guys are summoning a devil." Oh, okay.
And they're like,
I didn't.
They're just like, I'm out.
I wish I'd asked. I wish I'd asked. You guys got a slot open, or?
In this treehouse, we see there's one robed woman with long hair. We don't see her face yet because she's kneeling down in front of Charlie's decapitated head that sits atop a statue of Payman. And Peter looks around with a dazed, flat expression, and we're shown Annie and Ellen's headless bodies bowing down on the floor in front of this statue. And Joan's voice calls Peter Charlie as a woman crowns him.
Yeah, I noticed that that she called him Charlie.
Okay, I think I was right with my theory here. Since Payman was placed into Charlie's body as a baby, and he mostly prefers being in a male's body, I think he was probably more used to just being called Charlie.
Yeah. But
Joan's voice calls him Charlie, and she is like, "You're a demon."
Just so you know.
That we summoned. And she puts a crown on his head, and she introduces him as now Payman. Payman. He introduces him as the Pie Man.
She's like, "All right, everybody dig in." Yeah, she's Joan is talking to Payman, and she's like, "We looked to the northwest and called you in." And the only thing my note says here is, "What the hell's going on in Idaho that you need to call in a demon?"
Maybe another potato famine.
Maybe. I thought the ending shot was another creative thing, but also like a tie back to the various like beginning establishing shot. It ends with a model tree house filled with dolls that look like everyone. And it kind of like in reference to what I was saying earlier, they're all just being played with.
Yeah. So so up until the point where Peter starts getting chased around by the naked cult, like, I loved this movie, which it might be hard to tell from my mostly sarcastic comments, but the tension was perfect. The shots were pure subtlety and elegance, and I was actually ready to call it one of the best movies I'd ever seen. Like, the devil was in the details, literally and figuratively. But the moment Peter woke up and his mom was fluttering around like a disoriented moth, I was unable to take it seriously after that. I laughed my way through that last half hour of this movie.
Yeah. Ari Aster has a history of going with very big endings that sometimes he doesn't know how to end with. I would say that he corrected this in Midsommar. I know none of you are going to watch this, and I encourage you not to. Because I would say it's arguably much worse than this movie.
Worse in what sense?
Worse in the content that's in it.
Oh, like more disturbing.
More, yes.
Oh,
good.
More disturbing.
I'll definitely watch that. Because if I'm honest, I was mostly bored with this movie, except for the parts where I was laughing.
I like this movie from a writing standpoint, because there's enough foreshadowing for me to think that I don't think Ari Aster wrote this with the intent of like having the main characters just be the family. I think he wrote this from the standpoint of the cult instead of the family. If that makes more sense.
Kind of.
It all just like ties together so neatly. Like all of that said and done, like even with the terrible ending, like the shot compositions convey this is basically another main character.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and you know, despite the ending being silly and ridiculous, I agree. I liked the way that everything tied together. I like that the ending was hinted at for the entire movie.
Yes.
And like I was saying before, it was so tense and it was subtle, and it was honestly, up until the last half hour, it was everything that a scary movie should be. Absolutely full credit for the first, you know, like hour and 45 minutes ish of this movie. It was awesome.
I think this is, as terrible as it sounds, a movie that requires it to be watched multiple times.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that's where I'm missing out. Because now, looking back from ending to beginning, like looking back, it seems like there's a lot of things there that are more interesting now, I guess.
Yeah, because now you have the context of this cult influencing this family to a point where they can't control it. And there's and it's awesome too because each time you watch this, you're gonna find something horrific being done to this family. And I also think that the acting goes completely under the radar based on like how much tension there is. I think Toni Collette was snubbed for an Oscar for that year that it came out.
Absolutely. She was incredible in this movie.
Like the way that she was crying when she found out Charlie died, that was the most realistic crying I've ever heard. The fight scene in the dining room I love because it sounds too genuine.
Yeah.
Gabriel Byrne, who plays Steve, is I think the most underrated actor here because he's the most normal one, so you're not going to pay attention to him.
Right.
The way that he acts, just so done all the time. He just wants his fucking family to be normal.
I relate to him.
But he just does it so well, and it comes across so genuinely. And I think Alex Wolff gets some credit here as well, because I think he's come a long way since Naked Brothers Band. And he does a lot of face acting when Charlie dies, and conveys, I think, a little bit too much emotion when he starts crying to the point where it just comes across fake.
Yeah.
But I think he's grown a lot as an actor because I've seen him like grow up, and he's a goddamn terrible actor in those old projects.
Yeah.
Also, fucking shout out to Mila Shapiro, who plays Charlie, because she's so fucking creepy in this.
Yeah.
But in the most innocent way. I hope that she's like in a lot more things, and I can't wait to see what project she does next. But I think that she's probably like the most underrated star of this because of like how subtly creepy she is.
I don't know. I feel like I'm just gonna have to rewatch the film and try and get a little bit more from it.
Sounds good.
Fair.
Because I guarantee you missed something. Because there's just little Easter eggs everywhere. You're gonna notice something new every single time. I would also like to add in some trivia. One that I thought was fucking hilarious. One of the trailers for this movie was accidentally shown at a family film.
Oh.
It was shown as a trailer before Peter Rabbit was about to start.
That's fantastic.
And it caused a small panic in the theater with the parents fleeing the cinema with their kids.
What?
The theater eventually shut the screen off and offered every audience member a complimentary movie pass to apologize for the mistake. Can you imagine seeing this trailer going to see a kid's movie?
I think I'd be confused, definitely, at least.
Yeah.
I would have been like, this is fantastic. I am into this. But it was, the audience was probably full of parents and small children, so I can imagine why they didn't find it funny.
Yeah. I would also like to point out that the entire house was built on a soundstage. So like the interiors of it were all completely fake. It's not a real house.
Yeah, I actually watched like a little behind the scenes thing, and they were taking the audience through the layout of this like house, like the interior that they'd built in studio, and I was like, wow. Yeah.
And this is surprisingly Ari Aster's first feature film. He started out the gate strong.
He did. Has he made anything else besides this one and that other thing that you mentioned?
He's done some short films, and all of them I also recommend not watching. Because they're all on some way, shape, or form more fucked up than this.
Good.
You see, but that's what I feel like I'd get into.
I mean, I'll send you a link of all of his short films, and I'll tell you about his next film afterwards.
I'm scared.
Can't wait.
I'm scared. One more thing to throw in at the end here. Damien, you rock for filling in on such short notice. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. I mean,
You're the goat.
I didn't do much.
But you were here, and you did contribute, and I appreciate it so much. So, everyone give him a big round of applause. You at home, everyone at home, give him a round of applause.
I'm scared. Don't do that.
All right. And thank you for William for taking the lead on this, because most of my notes were sarcastic and scarce.
I've watched this movie like a lot of times, so I got you.
Well, that brings our review of this week's selection to a timely end. Thanks for joining us here on the Weekly What's Up, and until next time, this is Jay and the rest of the crew reminding you to keep producing art so we can keep making fun of it. If there's anything you'd like us to review in the next episode, you can send it to contacttwwu@gmail.com or tweet to us at the What's Upcast. Huge thanks to my co-hosts for joining me this week. You'll find their social media sites in the description below. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
I'm in hell.
Why?
Wanted to
You're
do a
back at that
callback.
bar? Oh, okay.
Okay, do you want me to tell you what Midsummer's about?
Yes, tell us.
Please.
Okay, so Midsummer's about a group of college kids, and the main character's family has all recently committed suicide.
Good. Starting off nicely, I see.
Thank God, I need to leave. Get me out of this podcast.
If there's anything you'd like us to review in the next episode, you can send it to contacttwwu@gmail. It's okay. It's gonna be fine. Hello, listeners near, far, and light years away. This is the Weekly What's Up. I'm Jay. Oh, we didn't pick an order, did we?
No, it's perfect. I love it.
Oh god, that was fantastic. And we'll splice that in, so we're just gonna keep going.
What are you doing, William? I'm writing down some ideas for a podcast I'm doing.
But I'm not sure how to get started. So good. Alright.
Love it. You're great.
Leave me alone. Oh god, I'm just trying to get
And
my...
tune in next week.
No, don't leave. We haven't even started yet. Alright.
We'll be right back.
We'll be back right after this.
It'll just be 60 minutes of ads.
Whoa, bro.
Keep acting like we're going to start, but we never do.
60 minutes of ads. This isn't YouTube. Huh.
Got him.
Okay, so we will be Okay, so we're gonna be
We're not even a second into this. My fucking fiance is so fucked. She has like a whole palette of things that go well with Vicks Vapor Rub.
What?
Yeah, she has like a tea she likes to drink and then also sniff Vicks Vapor Rub with.
Snowballs aren't really as directional.
You can kind of just like speak into the back of them and it's all like, all right.
Well, let me try speaking into the back. Tell me what you think. Can you hear me? I'm speaking into the back.
You actually do sound a little bit more muffled.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's a little bit directional.
But, like, I can still hear you. Hold on, let me do it. All right. Can you hear me now? Is this good?
Oh,
Or is
yeah.
Is my voice just already loud enough to where it can reach the front? And then Joan tells Annie that a medium was able to conjure her dead grandson, Louis. Fuck.
Louis.
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 Louis. Is it Louis or Louis?
I think it was Louis.
Yeah, I think it's Louis.
Okay, let me take that take again. Joan, shut up.
I like imagining she has a French grandson, though.
Not good. Not
But
good.
realizing, or fuck, I fucked up.